Hello. So it has been roughly 5 years since I have started this channel. And in all that time, I have never reviewed a Springbank that theoretically you could go buy on the shelf at the current time, even though you can't actually because the demand is silly. I have reviewed an old 100 proof 10-year-old, which I used kind of as the basis of my little Springbank substitute series, but not an actual currently buyable Springbank. So, and I just kind of figured, like, what is the point? What am I going to say that hasn't been said already about Springbank? But regardless of that, we're going to do a review anyways, because I want to get it in the books. I want you to know I don't know, my impressions, even if they repeat everyone else's. And the Patreons are going to get it first because I owe you guys one, because you are the folks keeping this channel afloat. So what are we going to be reviewing today? We have got Springbank 10-year-old. This is a recent release. It is batch 23-232, and both of these were just samples I got from Passion for Whisky, which is an online retailer. And then we have got the 2024 edition of the 12-year-old Cask strength. I'll grab that when this is over. And I'm sure both of these are long since unavailable, but they'll give you some idea. Oh, Lord, what do I say about Springbank? Arguably still the coolest distillery in Scotland. They source all of their barley from local farms. They malt it in-house and smoke it in-house for the peated stuff. And then they distill it. And this creates a hellacious bottleneck in how much they can produce. Springbank only makes about, I think it's 750,000 liters of pure alcohol per year, which is, not nothing, but consider that Macallan makes about 15 million. So we are a couple of order of magnitudes removed from the big boys with Springbank. And I mean, they make 3 different kinds of whiskeys, and Springbank in the middle, it's got all their nerdy stuff. We've got some direct firing. We've got some worm tubs thrown in there. We've got some partial triple distillation. Like, it's delicious. If you're a malt nerd, this is what you want. That being said, it is also much more expensive than it used to be. The 10-year-old used to be around $60. Now it's $100 or over. I mean, $60 back in the day was still sort of expensive relative to the other 10-year-olds out there, but it was totally worth it. And so I haven't tried either one of these bottlings of the standard range in a couple of years. Now seems like a good time. All right, let's start out with Springbank 10-year-old on the nose. Springbank is not it's not obvious in terms of what it is. There's some people will tell people, malt beginners to, stay away from things like Ardbeg. Nonsense. Go try some Ardbeg. You know why? Because Ardbeg 10, not so much maybe some of the others, but Ardbeg 10 is just pretty obvious. It is peat and vanilla. Everything else is part of the sideshow. And a lot of these big, very popular whiskeys these days are kind of like in that vein. They're very obvious in terms of what they're doing. This is not. Right away, I am getting salted nuts, of all things. It's almost like, it's not even like totally roasted nuts, it's as if you were trying to roast some peanuts and you took them out a little bit too early, so they're still like half green, and you were like, and you threw some salt on them anyways. It's a little bit like that. Oh, it's not just peanuts. There's some other nuts in there. There's a whiff of peat. It's very subtle. It's just providing a little bit of background color, but it's there. A little bit more of a maritime thing coming out. So you have the salt on the nuts, but you also have some just like, I don't know, some oyster shells maybe with a little bit of seawater still on them. And then you've got some cask influence. There's a touch of vanilla. I think the cask in this, the classic formula was always 60-40 bourbon to sherry. And I'm guessing that's what we're still getting here. So you're getting a little bit of vanilla. You're getting a little bit of kind of more savory style sherry. There's a little whiff of maybe like fig in there, but not a whole lot. I mean, it's mostly like leather that's been soaked in beef bouillon, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of orange peel, lemon peel, some like burned oatmeal. There's a grainy touch here. It's really an ensemble show, this whiskey. And it's always been that way since my day, when I started drinking this stuff, God, a decade and a half ago. Yeah, there's a little bit of peat. Yeah, there's a little bit of sherry, but there's also the nuttiness, the minerality, the graininess, the grunginess, the maritime element. Almost kind of like a metal thing, like a crumpled up piece of aluminum foil. It's a little bit rusty too. Dense nose, really complex, multifaceted. It takes a while for you to wrap your head around it, especially if you're coming into whiskeys new and you hear the hype about Springbank and you think, I'm going to go for that one. Don't do it. For God's sake, go buy an Ardbeg 10. Go buy half a dozen other good options. Like, this is one you need to prep yourself for. On the palate. Finesse. This is all about finesse. Well, there is, I will say, more of a kind of vanilla yellow cake thing, for lack of a better term, on this than I remember. It's less savory. We got kind of like, you got like a classic yellow cake thing happening with vanilla. But on the whole, if you were to list out the flavors, they would be very much like the nose. You're getting the salted black-green nuts. You're getting a little bit of brine seashells. That kind of burned oatmeal, cream of wheat thing. There is like half a quince here. A little bit of a quince element on this. More vanilla, but there's also the sherry, and again, there's like half a prune, and then leather and beef bouillon, or bovril, or something like that, something really savory. Black pepper. I mean, the mouth feel, the texture, before I add water at least, and we're going to add water in a second, it's a little bit light, but the finish is terrific. Like you have the peat hanging in there. Oh, did I mention the peat? There's peat. It's a little bit maritime. It's a little bit twiggy. It's a little bit farmy. So, there's the sea is nearby, but there's also a couple of cows, and they're all like chewing on twigs and stuff. That kind of thing. Maybe a couple of like fall leaves. Even a little bit of honey in there, actually. A little touch of like linden honey, something like that. Like lighter honey. Anyways, what was I talking? The finish. The finish is very, very good on this. This is actually a good... If you have a bottle of this lying around and you need an example of a really, really good finish, here's an example. Because what is hanging on the finish is not just the wood tannins. It's not just the pepper. It's not even just the peat. It's kind of all the stuff that had kind of popped up in the arrival and the development. All of that has a sustain on it and just kind of keeps going and going and going. This is a very, very good finish. Mouth length is also pretty good. It's tremendous. I mean, of course it is, right? Because it's got that reputation, but it backs it up. All right, let's move on. We'll come back to the 10, but now it is time for the 2024 edition of the Cask Strength 12-year-old. Oh man, I remember when this stuff used to go on like, closeout because no one wanted it, and now it's like, I'm sorry, I will stop being nostalgic for the old days of price imports and that stuff. I will shut up and I will just taste and review the whiskey. All right, I think this is 30% sherry, 70 bourbon, but judging by the color, I would guess the sherry casks were a bit more active on this. The strength is 57.2%. Right about 100 British proof. Close enough. Interesting. We've lost a lot of the maritime element. We picked up a heck of a lot of pepper. There's a lot of like white pepper, black pepper on this. Even some of those like little pink peppercorns. That's in here. Yeah, I'm remembering the sherry percentage is 30% on this. I'm going to double check that because there's a lot of sherry on this nose. You are getting prunes. You are getting various dried fruits. Some almost a dried cherry thing, almost a dried black currant. Yeah, something like that. The seashells are back. The nuts are back, but this time it's more like almost half-roasted almonds that have been salted, more so than like peanuts and other stuff. It's more almondy. I guess that's a sherry. The beef bouillon, the bovril, the leather, that stuff is all definitely back. Peat is more restrained on this nose. It's there. It's still background, but it's less background. It's just a little touch of color in there. Yeah, super duper subtle on the peat. Burned oatmeal, yes. But also almost like a burned cooking oil thing. Like you threw some canola oil or something into a pan that was already way too hot and smoky. But there is some vanilla. There's some bourbon cask in there. Okay. Fair bit of vanilla, actually. There's some... Oh, geez. Yeah, almost some kind of soda. I'm thinking of some kind of soda. Cream soda. Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of cream soda element to this. These are both actually presenting a little bit sweeter than I remember them being, which is not bad on the palate. Fabulous whiskey. Hard to knock this. Again, it's not one I would serve to someone just getting started in spirits tasting. because again, it's complex. There's a lot. It's an ensemble cast. There's no one obvious thing going on. More sherry driven than the nose, definitely. The nose, the 10-year-old. I'm sorry. So again, fig, prune, various dried fruits, half roasted nuts, almonds, but there's some other nuts in there too. Maybe some like green, half green pistachios, that kind of thing. Walnuts. Black pepper, lots of black pepper. Peat is more prominent on the palate, actually. It's kind of... It's not to say it's front and center in any way, like, Lefroy or whatever, but it's providing a lot more color than it was on the nose. And again, we're talking farmy, twiggy, grassy peat with a little bit of a maritime character. You got that sea salt thing in there. You got that kind of seashell thing in there. More so than traditional Isla peat. Very peppery. Touch of vanilla. Burned cereals again. Burned oatmeal, but almost like a cornflakes thing that's been, like cornflakes that have been set on fire. Something like that. This is the best I can do with this. That kind of hot oil thing. This is going to sound silly, but almost a ham note. Not country ham. We're not there. I know I've talked about country ham as a note in other videos. This is much more like classic honey glazed ham, something like that. And just a really darn good whiskey. Again, a masterclass in how finishes, behave at their best. It's not just tannins. It's not just, 2 or 3 notes that are holding on. It's kind of everything that is just hit that sustained pedal and just going on into the distance. Really excellent finish on this. I would still demand more from the mouthfeel, though. Like, it's nice, it's fine, but I've had better. I'm going to be honest. Length is also very good, though. Give this some water. We'll go back to the 10. 2, 3, 4. 4 might be enough. I don't know. We'll go 4.5. Back to the 10. I had mentioned the kind of vanilla yellow cake thing on the palate with this one. Now it's starting to show up a little bit more on the nose. Yeah, so imagine like dumping half roasted nuts and some seashells on a vanilla yellow cake, and that's kind of what this smells like. The peat is actually pulling back a little bit now that I've added water. Now, but there is more pepper. There's more of a white pepper kind of thing. A little pistachio coming out of it, but it's not. It's like almost like a South Asian dessert kind of pistachio, like pistachio and cardamom, something like that. Burned oatmeal. I'm still getting that burned cornflake note. Okay. So sweetens up in the nose, but also gets more peppery, and the peat kind of pulls back is the way I would sum this up. I mean, I know these are overhyped, but there is absolutely something to the hype. This is a fabulous whiskey. Water has brought out the peat a little bit more. So there's a little bit more of a farmy thing. Peat covered pigs and cows and goats running around a little bit with mud. And it's kind of pulled back actually on the kind of vanilla cake thing. That has gone to the nose. But what the main impression for me structurally is the mouth feel is now better. This is just now like covering the entire front of my palate. All of my cheeks are now covered in this stuff. Pepper, sea salt. Even a little bit of like an aniseed thing creeping. A little bit of like a absinthe element to this. Springbank is never boring. It just isn't. Like it is so dense and complex, and it is always changing from you. And that they deserve the success that they've had. They really, really do. This is great stuff. Score-wise, what could I ask? I could ask more from this. Like, if they kept this in cask a hair bit longer, let some of those secondary characteristics develop a little bit more. Some of the and just gave it a little bit more punch, a little bit more intensity on, especially on the arrival. Like we would be heading into the stratosphere. As it is, I'm going to give this like an 88 point score. 88 points for this Springbank 10-year-old batch 23/232. This is very good. Let us move on to the 12-year-old. On the nose. Okay, so the nose kind of pulls back a little bit with water. Still very peppery. We're still getting a lot of those kind of savory notes. The nuttiness, which is both coming from the spirit and the sherry casks. The beef bouillon thing. It's not exactly peaty, but there's the twigginess. The twigs from the peat are starting to come through a little bit more. Not the peat itself, weirdly. But yeah, on the whole, the nose kind of less impactful than it was neat on the palate. Especially on the second sip. I mean, it's a fabulous whiskey. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit there and look you in the eyes and tell you that this is crap and you should drink something else. Because this is really good. Water has brought out more black pepper. And it's already had a ton of black pepper on it. It has brought out the leather and the beefy, savory stuff. And it already had a ton of that. Tricky. It's firmed up the mouthfeel. I get a lot. Same story with the 10-year-old. This is now covering my entire palate, especially like from sip number 2 onwards. And the peat has actually stepped forward again, kind of like the 10-year-old. It's more prominent now with water. I'm being honest with you, though. I feel like maybe the finish has become a hair bit too tannic. I mean, it's not a bad finish by any means. Like, this is it grips and grips and grips, but the tannins from the cask are kind of holding on, or kind of stepped up a little bit too much to the extent that they're kind of crowding out some of the other elements that I want to be there. I mean, it's a good problem to have when your finish is just like too loud. But so I don't know. One more time. I'm torn between like an 89 and a 90. I might go 90 minus. You know what? Given the kind of step back on the nose with water, I'm going to give this a 90 minus. It's very, 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 very good, but I did kind of like it more without water. So yeah, if you got this edition, drink it neat, which shouldn't be a problem because it's delicious. But yeah, so there you go. I mean, these are fabulous. $88 points for the 10-year-old, 90 minus for the 12-year-old cask strength. Very, very, very good whiskeys. Here's the problem, and I'll use this as an end note. The problem is this. Here's Hamden. This is Hamden Estate HLCF Classic Overproof Jamaican Rum. And you can get this probably right now if you're nearby, if you're kind of in a good urban area and you have a cool liquor store nearby. They probably have this on the shelf. It's available. It's out there for around $80-$90, something like that. So not inexpensive, but it's fabulous. This is, I can't remember if I scored this in like a 90 or 91, but it's somewhere in that territory. This is really freaking good for something that is, so widely available. And I point to this. I could also point to Ben Romack for that matter, but I want to point to this because I really feel like as good as these things are, there's a point at which the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You should try these. Absolutely. Like, go to, on your next passion for whiskey order or whatever, when you're buying a bunch of Barryons, throw these in the cart. Throw some Springbank samples in the cart. Absolutely do it. You need to try these. They're phenomenal. But as something, if you are spending an inordinate amount of time looking around for bottles of Springbank 10 and 12, why, when this is out there, when so many other fabulous bottles in other categories, but also in Scotland, are out there? I know these guys are getting the spotlight right now. I know they're getting the hype, but go try some other things. Honestly. And I think a great place to start is this little Hamden here. And that is the video. Thanks for watching, and cheers.